Oh man. I don't even know why I'm playing this. Cause Chuck E. Cheese is well and still alive. I don't even know why I'm playing this. Cause Chuck E. Cheese is still alive. I went to Chuck E. Cheese last year. I was messing with this one girl. Her kid had a birthday, and I went to Chuck E. Cheese. This is like last year though. I don't even know why I did that. But anyways, though, yo, what is going on, everybody? It's your boy, Mr. DDG94, back with another reaction video. Today we're going to react to the decline of Chuck E. Cheese, man. God damn, man. What's going on with Chuck E. Cheese, man?
To this day. That's what I'm talking about. That's why he's here today. That's why he's going to go.
Come on, man. Come on, man. Motherfucking Chuck E. Cheese. Nigga, what? Whether it was your birthday, your friend's birthday, your cousin's birthday, your brother, your sister's birthday, nigga, Chuck E. Cheese was lit, my guy. Y'all just don't know. Well, y'all probably do know. Chuck E. Cheese. I ain't been to Chuck E. Cheese in a long time. I think the last time I was at Chuck E. Cheese, like my youngest sister's my youngest sister's birthday. I think she was like 2 or 3 years old. I want to say we went out there for her birthday. That was like 2015, 2014, one of them years. Went out to Chuck E. Cheese. Oh man. That was the last time I went to Chuck E. Cheese. I went up in there. They had fucking Call of Duty. They had 2K, Call of Duty, Need for Speed. I was like, what the fuck happened to Chuck E. Cheese? Why they got all these mainstream games in here? Why they got 2K in here? I was confused with them motherfuckers, man. I was confused, bro. They had 2K in Chuck E. Cheese, bro. I was confused, bro.
You know, I can always count on my audience to keep me up to date on the latest bankruptcy filings. I don't think any of them get past me. It can actually get a little depressing sometimes, but I still appreciate it. This one in particular, I used to love this place. Chuck E. Cheese is a combination of pizza and arcade games. What else can you ask for as a kid? In 2019, 56% of their sales came from entertainment and merchandise, and the remaining 44% came from food and beverages, which is good because they prefer to sell the entertainment and merchandise.
Hey, they pizza.
To this day. To this day. To this day.
They pizza always been fire. I don't care what y'all say. Chuck E. Cheese pizza always been fire, bruh. I don't care what nobody say, man. Chuck E. Cheese pizza used to always hit, bruh. Every time we went, bro, Chuck E. Cheese pizza used to hit. Even though them slices be like super skinny, didn't they slices used to be like super skinny, used to be like this skinny and shit. But it ain't matter though. You get you about 6 of them things, put them on there with the chicken wings. Ooh! Come on, man. That shit used to hit, bro. The motherfucker. Ooh, what the Let me shut up. Let's continue the video.
Is because they have a higher profit margin. They say it's intended for families with children between the ages 2 and 12, especially for birthday parties.
Pretty much
16%
birthday
of the
party.
revenue came from reserved birthday party packages. And the buildings are far bigger than your average pizza place. That's because they have seating for over 400 guests, in addition to about 75 games, rides, and attractions, including the Ticket Blaster. You go inside this windy area and try to catch all these tickets flying around. I don't remember seeing this one back in the day, but I have to admit that I would still not mind giving this one a try. Now, as someone who hasn't been there in probably more than 15 years now, I have to ask the question, what is this? Is this what kids today think of when they hear the name Charles Entertainment Cheese? Yeah, that's his full name, and it happens to be the funniest name I've ever heard. But this new guy, he plays guitar, wears jeans, and where is his hat? I don't know how I feel about this. I guess they changed him in 2012. This right here is the Chuck E. Cheese that I know.
That's the Chuck E. Cheese we all grew up with.
With him running around that arcade. As I say all of this, the bankruptcy is very new, but it's looking like they're going to survive. Hopefully, they're just gonna close a few restaurants and come back from it stronger than ever. As far as the reasoning behind it, simply put, they've been in a financially dangerous situation for a while now, and then when this pandemic happened, they were forced to close locations, and the loss of sales proved to be too much.
And that's when they started selling pizza during the pandemic. I remember they used to sell pizza during the pandemic. And I actually went and got me a slice. I actually went out and bought me a slice. I pulled up, nigga. I couldn't believe it. It was a long ass line, bro. It was a long ass line. It was like 7 cars deep, bro. 7 cars deep in that big ass parking lot. It don't seem like that much. But nigga, when you gotta think about the fact that they actually in there baking your pizzas fresh, like these are freshly made pizzas. These ain't no pizzas they just had sitting around in a box. They ain't like Little Caesars or nothing like that where they just been sitting in a box on a heater. Nah, they making your shit fresh. So you trying to, nigga? I went up there. I ordered a whole pizza, a thing of chicken wings, and a large soda. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't gonna lie, my nigga.
Damn, son.
So the best pizza I had in a minute, bruh. Shout out to Chuck E. Cheese.
I'll talk more about it later. I have all these graphs made, but I have to say that this bankruptcy is just the latest addition to a pretty eventful history. It's technically not even the first bankruptcy. And how about this? Chuck E. Cheese was started in 1977 by Nolan Bushnell, who, believe it or not, is also the main guy who founded the video game company Atari. Chuck E. Cheese actually started as a division of Atari, and it was Bushnell's experience with video games that gave him the idea. He had sold so many of them to businesses who would set them up in their tavern or restaurant and recognized how they were the ones making the real money. He said he was selling these coin-operated games for $1,500, and then over their lifetime, they would earn $30,000 to $50,000 from all the people paying quarters to play them. So he thought that he would be better on that end of the situation, but he also knew that he needed to be unique about it. He had the idea of serving food, especially pizza, because it took time to prepare, and that wait time was the perfect opportunity to play some games. He also had the idea of using animatronic entertainment. He had previously worked at carnivals, so
that
he knew
shit's
that once
scary
the characters
right
were
there.
created, it was a
That shit right there is
way
scary.
to keep people's attention. At first, it was going to be called Coyote Pizza, but then when making the animatronic, the coyote costume that they ordered turned out to be a rat costume. Bushnell's immediate response was to just run with it and instead call the restaurant Rick Rat's Pizza, which is not great for obvious reasons. Ultimately, because it sounds chipper and forces you to smile when you say it, the name was chosen to be Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater. Of course, the designs and the details have changed over the past few decades, but the general principle is still the same today. The issue for Bushnell here was that this was a division of Atari, and he had recently sold Atari to Warner the previous year. So though it was his idea and he was the driving force behind it, he did not own it. Luckily for him, I don't think Warner really wanted it. They weren't too interested in running an arcade-themed restaurant. restaurant, so they were willing to sell it to him for the very reasonable price of $500,000, which he paid them over a 5-year span. Bushnell was forced to separate from Atari soon after, and that's when he started dedicating his full-time efforts toward Chuck E. Cheese. That first restaurant was a massive success from day one, so without hesitation, he opened an even bigger second location that was quickly followed by many more. They were such a hit that he was getting approached by people that wanted to open their own Chuck E. Cheese franchises. The notable one here is a deal that he made with Robert Brock. He owned this hotel company and was looking to own a bunch of Chuck E. Cheese franchises. The two made a deal to make it happen, then soon after, Brock wanted out of the deal because he instead wanted to work with someone else to start his own chain of similar restaurants. Bushnell then sued him for breaking the contract, and the end result was Brock being able to open and operate his own chain of similar restaurants called Showbiz, but he had to give a small percentage of the sales to Bushnell. Through the first half of the 1980s, the two competed with each other, both expanding just about as fast as they could. They were going into debt, Chuck E. Cheese had a public stock offering, they were hustling to get the money from all angles so they can keep up with each other and continue growing. 1984 is when everything went bad. Back in the 1980s, when there was a new Chuck E. Cheese in your town, it was unlike anything you had seen before, so you're gonna want to bring out the family and check it out. So there's a bit of a novelty aspect to it, meaning they're much more likely to get more business when they first open, and then you can expect that to slow down over time. Well, Bushnell was in a rush to open a bunch of these, so he didn't have time to wait and see whether or not the sales would fall, meaning he was opening new locations based on sketchy information, which led to many of the new ones being placed in less than ideal areas. The same thing happened with Brock, and to further complicate things, the great video game crash of 1983 really dropped in popularity, and it was not a good time to be involved with them in any way. Just to put this all together, they had gone into debt to open dozens of restaurants, many of which were in poorly chosen areas, just before people stopped caring about the core of their business. I think we can see where this is headed. The poor sales meant Chuck E. Cheese couldn't keep up with that high debt, so they were forced into bankruptcy, which actually marks the end of that original chain. Showbiz, however, was able to navigate through it. They refinanced their loans and sold off about 15% of the company to raise money. Not only did they survive, they were able to put together $35 million to buy the assets of Chuck E. Cheese through that bankruptcy.
Damn.
So that right there, that is a strange turn of events. The imitator ended up beating the original. To me, that's like if Lucky Charms were to fail and then be acquired by Marshmallow Mateys.
Damn.
The end result was a much larger company.
And Marshmallow Mateys actually good though.
Almost 250
Fuck Lucky
restaurants
Charms
under both of the names Showbiz and Chuck E. Cheese. That's how they existed for the rest of the 1980s. Some tricky transfers of ownership happening, but the two chains remained together but as separate brands. Then, in the early 1990s, they decided that it would be more efficient to simply combine them. They started converting all the Showbiz restaurants into Chuck E. Cheese restaurants because they figured that it would be smarter to have one powerful brand rather than two weaker ones. So oddly enough, for the next 5 years or so, the company itself was called Showbiz Pizza, but all of the restaurants were called Chuck E. Cheese. Then in 1998, they changed the name of the company to CEC Entertainment, finally marking the end of the name Showbiz after a pretty crazy 18-year run. Alright, getting back to the recent issues, they have had trouble attracting customers. They even implemented this whole revitalization strategy to try to breathe some life back into it. Some of the highlights would be an emphasis toward parents. I don't think parents like this place very much. They never really have because it can get pretty chaotic.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie to you. There was one time I went to a Chuck E. Cheese for this one girl I was messing with. This is a long time ago. This is like 2016, 2017, bro. I was messing with this one chick, bro. We went there for her daughter's birthday, for her daughter's 3rd birthday, bro. Swear to God, bro. A whole nother family off in the corner. Whole damn fight break out. And I'm talking about, nigga, it's the Royal Rumble, nigga. It was going down, nigga. It was going down, nigga. It was no games being played. I don't know what the fuck happened. Everything was calm. And then the next thing you know, 2 aunties just fighting each other. And then the aunties fight each other. Then the men come in to break them up. And then the next thing you know, one of the sons or whatever came out of nowhere and punched one of the men in the face. And I'm just like, yo, what the fuck? Next thing you know, it's WWE Royal Rumble, nigga. They was going crazy, bro. I can't even explain it to y'all, bro. It's just niggas being niggas at its finest. That's the best way I can describe it. That's why people don't fuck with Chuck E. Cheese. That's why you should never fuck with Chuck E. Cheese's in the hood. Especially on the south side of Milwaukee. Never fuck with them Chuck E. Cheese's. Ever.
So they've been making this effort to focus
always
their
go to the white
them,
people Chuck E. Cheese.
Their menu to include more
because the cops always
they've
around.
Been implementing this play pass
south side cops not around. I'm telling you,
just to make things simpler and quicker. They have remodeled 82 of their 612 locations. They now have Wi-Fi. It's hard to tell, but it looks like these may have helped a little. But in addition to the unpredictable revenue, they've been dealing with these rising expenses. Just a bunch of smaller things that have been adding up. Higher ingredient costs, changes in minimum wage laws causing their labor costs to go up, stuff that you might expect. But when you combine these higher expenses with the lower revenue, it results in a consistently lower operating income. Meaning, while operating these restaurants, they're making less and less money from it each year. But honestly, even with the pandemic complicating things, I would never expect these factors to lead to a bankruptcy. This operating income has been going down, but it's still very much in the positive. They've been making tens of millions of dollars every year. So here's the real issue, and you might see where this is headed. I think you'll agree that in 2014, their total debt took a pretty major leap, practically tripling to over $1 billion. And that's because in 2014, Chuck E. Cheese was bought by a private equity firm called Apollo Global Management for the price of $950 million. And that same year, Chuck E. Cheese spent $113 million to acquire a smaller Arizona-based pizza chain called Peter Piper Pizza, which I think happens to be another really good name. After those deals, they were loaded with debt, and over the last 5 years have not paid very much of it off. When you're making $50 million a year, that's really good, unless you have $1 billion in debt. You will never pay it off that way. You're kind of living on the edge at that point. And there's also one more layer to consider that's been making this situation even worse. Nothing of what I've said so far has accounted for interest. When you are $1 billion in debt, you have to pay a lot of interest. That operating income is what they have before the interest expense is included, which is almost always greater. Meaning, once everything is included, they're actually losing money each year. They reported losses 5 of the last 6 years since the acquisition. They are really never going to pay off the debt that way. With this trend, I don't see how they would ever really pay it off without something big happening, like maybe a bankruptcy. To summarize, Chuck E. Cheese has had some trouble as far as lower sales and rising costs. Nothing that I would consider too threatening, but then they went ahead and raised that debt to over $1 billion, which I don't think they can afford. For the last 5 years, they've been living payment to payment, and then when something happened to interrupt their cash flow, that was it. I think of Chuck E. Cheese as a person that was living so far beyond their means that a temporary pay cut led to the bank foreclosing on their house. Let me know in the comments, do you agree with that assessment? It is hard to deny that the $1 billion in debt added in 2014 through those acquisitions is their main issue, but is there more to it that I failed to mention? Also, what do you think of the early years of the company? It started as part of Atari and then went bankrupt and was bought by a competitor that was almost an early part of the business. There was some cool stuff happening there. And how do you envision Mr. Chuck E. Cheese? This guy right here will always be the true one in my
facts. Ain't even up for debate. It ain't even up for debate.
That's what I'm talking about. That's why he's in me. That's why he's the GOAT.
That's the only Chuck E. Cheese I will ever fucking acknowledge. It's that guy right there. I don't know who that other motherfucker is. That other motherfucker, he can get killed. He can, hey, snip that motherfucker head off. And I'm gonna miss somebody.